Every afternoon, there are four things you need to know about. They tend to happen after about 3 p.m. Eastern, and before you get home, you might as well learn about them before you hear it on the evening news. That's my job. I'm Erick Erickson. Tune in wherever your podcasts are available, on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever. You'll get the four things to know in the afternoon. Search Erick Erickson or go to erickerickson.com/4 things to know for the links. Be more informed than your family and friends.
Welcome to the Erick Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello, America. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the nation. It's an open line Friday, 877-973-7425. My producer tells me Ryan Elijah has reached out in Florida 7. We will get him on the show so he can introduce himself to all of you nationwide. He's the guy brave enough to stand up and take on Cory Mills in Florida's 7th Congressional District in the primary. And that matters because Cory Mills is really damaged goods. Now, all of you nationwide, I want to read for you this biography of Cory Mills, just so you understand. The man is a veteran. He enlisted in the Army, was a member of the 82nd Airborne, took part in Operation Allied Force during the Kosovo War in 99, deployed in Iraq, Bronze Star, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There were questions raised about the award following an Army investigation that exonerated Mills. One of the two men who had allegedly received life-saving care from Mills under enemy fire said his injuries had not been life-threatening, and he and the helicopter pilot did not remember Mills being there. The sergeant whom Mills had allegedly rescued from an enemy insurgent said the incident did not happen. True stories. The board of the Independent Office of Congressional Ethics investigated inconsistent financial statements in August of 2024. The report said the Office of Congressional Ethics found that from January 2023 to present, PASM Defense ALS have been actively contracting with the federal government, securing close to $1 million in federal contracts for munitions and weapons distributed to prisons across the country. Specifically, since January 9, 2024, 94 contracts have been awarded to entities owned by Congressman Mills. Mills denied wrongdoing, did not cooperate with the investigation, refused to provide tax returns, or explain the ownership structure of his countries. The House Ethics Committee said it would investigate Mills for violating federal law. On November 19th, the House Ethics Committee announced it was forming an investigative subcommittee. He's under active investigation. In 2014, he married an Iraqi refugee who gained naturalized citizenship status and served in the first Trump administration. That was Mills's second marriage. They were divorced within a year. He began dating Lindsay Langston in 2021 and ended the relationship following an arrest for assault. An arrest for assault. On February 21st, 2025, the Metropolitan Police Department of the District of Columbia began investigating an alleged physical assault of a woman by Mills at his penthouse in Washington, D.C. She listed the same address as her home, although it was not Mills's wife. It was a different woman. The police report describes Mills as her significant other for over a year. An arrest warrant was issued for Cory Mills in February 24th of last year, and the District of Columbia, a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney at the time, Ed Martin, refused to allow the warrant for reasons no one would explain. On August 6th of 2025, media outlets reported Lindsay Langston, a former Miss United States, filed a lawsuit alleging Mills threatened to release nude videos of her after she ended their relationship, and he threatened to harm any future romantic partners of her. Langston told the Columbia County Sheriff's Department she was in a relationship with Mills from 21 until 2025 and ended after she saw reports of his alleged assault of a different woman in Washington, D.C. And she had to get a restraining order against him. That is the current incumbent congressman in the 7th Congressional District of Florida. So he's under investigation for contracts being steered to government contracts being steered to his company in the private sector, though he's in Congress. That violates the law. He's under congressional investigation for abuse of women. He had a arrest warrant quashed by allies of his in the Trump administration. He's had another woman had to get a restraining order against him. Mills's conduct is actually worse than Max Miller's conduct, and neither man will get out of the way. You in Florida in the 7th Congressional District have an opportunity to clean this mess up by voting for Ryan Elijah. There's a poll that has just come out. Elijah is 3 points behind Mills. There are a couple other people in the race in single digits. Combined, they get a majority of the vote in this race. There are a lot of undecided people still. In Florida's 7th Congressional District, that stretches from the northern edges of the Orlando listening area, WDBO, up towards New Smyrna Beach, Port Orange, just south of Daytona Beach. You have the ability to throw Cory Mills out of Congress. If Cory Mills stays in, the Democrats will move heaven and earth to remind the independent voters of that district, of which there are enough to cost him the election. And by the way, if those voters take it out on the Republicans for not standing up to him, that's going to cost the Republicans votes in the governor's race. I mean, Cory Mills is unethical, bad, abusive. He needs to be gone. Republicans, it's very simple. If you don't clean up your own side, the voters do it for you. We saw this in 2006. If you go back to 2006, when the Democrats swept into Congress, one of the things that came up in the polls regularly is that the voters didn't really like the Democrats, but the Republicans they felt were deeply unethical. Tom DeLay had been carted off to jail. Ultimately, his case was thrown out. Other Republicans were getting arrested. Other Republicans were going to jail. The Denny Hastert scandal was starting to unfold. It turned out he was a child molester. And the voters decided, you know what, we don't really care for the Democrats, but we're going to vote for the Democrats. And the Democrats held the House for 4 years as a result. This is on you, Republicans. It's not on the independent voters, not on moderates, it's not on Democrats, it's on you. If you don't clean up your house, the other voters will. So you have the ability in Florida to clean up your house in the primary by rejecting Cory Mills. It is 100% on you. And the rest of us and the rest of the country are looking at you and saying, guys, you got a competent alternative in a guy named Ryan Elijah who has no baggage and no scandal. He would be a solid Republican vote. You could take Cory Mills out. You could put him in Congress. Ryan Mills is the guy who's in second place. He is close to beating Cory Mills already in the polling. This is from Ballotpedia. Cory Mills has been under investigation by the House Ethics Committee since 2025. According to Politico's Haley Fuchs, Mills allegedly held weapons contracts with the federal government while serving in Congress, according to the Office of Congressional Conduct. On November 19, 2025, the House Ethics Committee voted to establish a committee to investigate allegations of violation of campaign finance law and allegations of misconduct. Mills faces calls to resign over the investigation and withdraw his reelection bid, but denied wrongdoing, saying anything the committee asked of us, we've complied. Why not let the investigative body and the Ethics Committee do their job? We're very happy to see what the outcome is. Mills said Ryan Elijah says the investigation against Mills could make him vulnerable in the general election. And Ryan Elijah is absolutely right. Not only that, but the outside reviewer for the House Ethics Committee says Mills refused to cooperate, refused to hand over tax returns, refused to hand over any information. Guys, there's no reason for a Democrat to win this seat, but there's a good chance they do if Cory Mills stays in that seat. So please vote for Ryan Elijah. I don't know the guy. I've never met the guy, but he's in second place. He's a conservative. Never met the guy in my life. I'm going to get him on the show, so you introduce him to y'all. But we don't have to hand a seat to the Democrats. That would be a safe Republican seat if we had a candidate who wasn't filled with scandal. Now, there is other news out there. Now, Jim, full disclosure here. I have not played this audio. This just dropped. And I am assuming there are no bad words in it. But I'm just preparing you. I don't think there's anything bad in this video. This always makes my team nervous. But we have a bleep button. But this is important. Enes Kanter Freedom, the conservative pro-Trump immigrant basketball player who was exiled from the NBA because he's a conservative. He has released a video today, and he is announcing that based on the standards set forth by the WNBA, he is willing to believe he is a woman and play in the WNBA.
After careful consideration and reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, I am officially declaring myself a WNBA prospect. If simply declaring who you are is all that's required, then I meet every single requirement necessary to compete in the WNBA. My team and I have carefully examined the WNBA's eligibility criteria and governing framework surrounding self-identification and inclusion. Based on the current guidelines, I can and am officially declaring my eligibility for the upcoming WNBA draft in May 2027. I am definitely not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices. I am simply asking that the current rules be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception. And I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles.
That's brilliant. That is brilliant. Yeah, the WNBA says that anybody should be able to play in the WNBA. By the way, you know, one of the funniest things about this is the most vocal coach in the WNBA that men should be able to play in women's sports is also opposed to male coaches taking women coaches' jobs. You can't make that up. These progressive, neurotic white women, of which there are many in the WNBA. The players are all mostly lesbians, I think. But these neurotic coach, white, progressive women, they're the ones who would harass you in grocery stores during COVID for not putting masks on. They're the ones who are after Sophie Cunningham for saying boys should stay out of girls' sports. They're the ones who are like, no, boys can come in. And the WNBA standards on self-identification, if you believe yourself to be a woman, according to the WNBA, you can play in the WNBA. So Enes Kanter Freedom, that's his real name, loves the United States, loves Donald Trump, loves this country, is a conservative, says he wants to play in the WNBA. He has declared himself a prospect based on the WNBA's own standards. Their own standards. He should qualify. And if, by the way, they reject him, there's going to be a federal lawsuit. There could be. I don't know that he'll actually sue, but there could be, because he's just complying with the standards set by the WNBA. Good for him. Listen, guys, you can find creative ways around the rules. You can find creative ways. He has found a creative way that is under the rules of the WNBA to get back into professional sports. Whichever team put him on would be dominant. You know, Clay Travis up in Nashville has announced he wants to do a WNBA team. He wants to call it the Nashville Balls, and he will commit that every single player is a trans woman. Every single player on his team, if they will give him an expansion team, would be a trans woman. Enes can lead the pack. There's a great opportunity there to hold the WNBA to its own standards. And you people in Florida, you need to hold your Republicans to standards and toss Cory Mills in favor of Ryan Elijah and clean up that house. We got a lot of cleaning up to do in this country, and it begins with voters voting the right way and sanity coming back into sports, among other things. Those of you on the phones, be patient with me. I want to get to your phone calls this Open Line Friday, 877-973-7425. That's 877-97-ERIC. By the way, Dennis down, a WDBO listener, writes, please remind people Florida 7 is one of the only, if not the only districts in America without a lien. That is, poll after poll after poll shows there are 33% of the voters there say they're Republican, 33% of the voters there say they are Democrat, 33% of the voters there say they are independent or undecided. So the I-4 corridor district has always been important. We were represented by Republican John Mica for 25 years, but he underestimated Stephanie Murphy and lost her seat in 16. Cory Mills got it back from the Democrats, and he could give it back to them. That district is perfectly evenly divided 3 ways, Republican, Democrat, and Independent. So the probably the perfect swing district in the country that Cory Mills is going to hand to the Democrats. It is not a hard Republican district. So if Mills is the Republican, it will go to the Democrats. The Republicans in D.C. are convinced of it. So you got a choice there in Florida to fix it. Now, here's something else I just learned. Random factoid. Did you know that the United Auto Workers now have more members from academic institutions than auto workers in the UAW? The University of California's academic local alone represents 48,000 workers, more than the UAW's total membership at the global automaker Stellantis. Harvard's graduate students account for 4,000 members of the United Auto Workers. In other words, they call themselves the Auto Workers Union, but they're actually now the Academic Workers Union, the United Academic Workers. They're no longer the United Auto Workers. That is some wild. I had no idea, but that's it. The UAW moving left. All right, we got to talk about Iran when we come back. We got to take your phone calls. Want to get Alan's phone call when we come back. Before I get there, though, I got to tell you, high prices are here to stay. Gas and grocery and insurance. If you're a homeowner, you probably thought, so should I call somebody to help deal with my credit card debt? American financing is an option. If you've got a low mortgage rate, you might be able to use American financing to weaponize your low mortgage rate against your very high interest rate credit cards. I mean, credit card interest rely on 25%, and the math just doesn't add up for you. So think about them. American financing, they're not commission-based. They're salary-based. There's no pressure. There's no upfront fees. Their average customer saves about $800 a month using their equity to break free of credit card debt. So you should give them a call. If you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. So if you call American Financing, you can call them at 866-886-9262. That's 866-886-9262 or AmericanFinancing.net/Erick. Remember, .net, AmericanFinancing.net/Erick or 866-886-9262.
NMLS number 182334. NMLSConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 start at 6.327% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-886-9262 for details about credit costs and terms. Visit AmericanFinancing.net/Erick. Average savings based on borrowers who save over $199.
Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here this Open Line Friday, 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, y'all, I need to tell you, by the way, I took my son to see the Spider-Man movie, and it was great. It was probably the longest Spider-Man movie that's been made. It was I thoroughly enjoyed the Spider-Man movie. Is it kid appropriate? No, because the Punisher's in it, and so he has a potty mouth, and so it's not really kid friendly. There are some GDs in there, among other things, from the Punisher, which goes to character. But man, the movie was a thoroughly enjoyable movie. Really enjoyed it. If you want to go see that movie. Now to the phones. Alan's been waiting. I want to get to Alan's phone call. Thanks for being patient, Alan. How are you?
Oh, real good. I sure appreciate you letting me on.
Sure.
The reason I called in was a number of times you've said, I can't do you justice, but the 30 large corporations, the government now has a stock position for life. Yeah. Yes, okay. And I would have maybe been bothered by that years and years ago, but not now, because we're at war with the Chinese Communist Party, and when they choose to take a position like they did years ago with solar or steel, not only is an American corporation or business taking on their competition, they're taking on the Chinese Communist Party, who at the same time is able to lobby here. And we do not have anything remotely comparable to equity in how we deal with them, like they're buying real estate close to military installations. So if you don't give business the power to fight them, they're going to lose, because they're taking on a government on top of a business. Because the Chinese Communist Party is led by an engineering type of thinking, and they don't sweat the people. They got plenty of people. Something goes wrong, well, some of them die.
So
they're not bothered.
So your argument essentially, in my mind, boils down to we have to fight the Chinese by being like the Chinese.
To some degree, because we are compromised in this country. The Democrats and the Republicans, they want power. That's why I'm for Trump more so than the Conservative Party, because the Conservative Party, I have thought certain times, they're not looking out for me. I'm not a wealthy man. I've just, but I see certain things, and I'm 67 years old. After I've reached a certain point where I'd like to think I'm not so easily snookered. Maybe I am, because I don't have a problem admitting, for instance, when you and I discuss a situation, I know your IQ is higher than mine. I don't have a problem admitting that. But I'm not mentally soft in how I think, because I try to study history and I try to study politics and follow things as well. And we are at war with two elements: the Chinese Communist Party, that has got their claws in this country, and we are at war with the radical part of the Muslim world. Not so much Saudi Arabia, maybe to a lesser degree, but definitely Iran, and, for instance, Sharia courts in this country. We should have laws. There should be no Sharia courts, but they're secret and they're hidden.
Okay, so let me just pause you there now, because here are the companies that the United States has an interest in. There are 30 of them. So one of them is Intel. The government has taken a 10% equity stake in Intel, backed by the CHIPS Act. Here's my problem with that. Intel has multiple competitors in the United States, and Intel, of its competitors, is in the worst position. It has innovated the worst. It has lost contracts with major American companies. But so now the government has an ownership interest in Intel, and if we need to combat the communist Chinese by taking an ownership interest in Intel, we're putting Intel now in a competitive advantage with government control over its more capable competitors. So the government has essentially bet on the weakest horse in the field. So if you want to take on China by operating like China, they could have at least picked a better horse to bet on than Intel. But the larger issue is Intel has multiple American competitors. And by having multiple American competitors, why should the government be picking a winner between the competitors, particularly when it's chosen the worst of the competitors, when the government should be advocating for all American companies? Respectfully, Alan, my position is we have been beating China. We have. More people want to invest in America than China. More people want to come to the United States than China. The dollar outperforms the Chinese currency. The Americans get better trade rates than the Chinese. The Chinese have fallen behind. They've been in an economic depression for the last 2 years. That's objective fact. The Chinese are not ascending. They are declining. That is objective fact at this point. It's the whole reason Xi Jinping is trying to do the nationalist saber rattling over invading Taiwan, is because he needs something to distract the people of China. We have been beating China. Our economy is outpacing China. Remember, this was supposedly the year that the American economy was going to fall behind the Chinese economy, and we're like 15 percentage point. We're like 15 times larger. I forget the exact number, but our economy is larger than China. Our GDP is more than China. So why should we compete with China the way China has been competing with us, when the way we had been doing it has been outperforming China? This is the argument that a lot of people on the right are making right now, that we have to behave like the left in order to beat the left, but we've been beating the left by not being the left. You cannot outperform China by being like China. They are the OG China. You can't embrace a little bit of communism to beat the complete communists. I mean, you're absolutely right that the Democrats and Republicans want power. And you're absolutely right that the Chinese can lobby in this country in a way we cannot lobby in China. Where I would say your logic is wrong, though, is that we shouldn't be embracing the things China does to beat China when we've been beating China by not being like China. We're never going to out-China China. So we should out-American China. And the way you out-American China is you get the government out of picking winners and losers. The Chinese pick the winners and losers. You get the government out of investing in companies, and you let the private sector do it. The government has been giving major financial backing to IBM, among other things. How many years have you guys been hearing about Watson? How many years have you guys heard about Watson? Y'all all know Watson. IBM runs all these ads about Watson. Watson, the supercomputer, they put him on Jeopardy at some point. I bet you Claude could kick Watson's butt. Claude and Anthropic did it without government subsidy. IBM has needed government financial backing. The U.S. has invested in U.S. Steel, golden shares, veto rights over major decisions. The U.S. Steel has been protected by a protectionist scheme. It's now actually Nippon Steel because we ultimately decided that the Japanese could do a better job of running it than us. I totally understand the concerns. Alan, I totally understand your concerns. But I just think that you can't beat China by being like China because we've been beating China by not being like China. To change the rule book and say, hey, we need to be more like the Chinese, we're already kicking their butt. Our GDP is higher than theirs. You know, they're in population decline. They have more people than us, but their population reproduction rate is actually less than ours. Our average earnings in this country for the poorest Americans is actually more than the Chinese. The poorest American is wealthier than the poorest Chinese person. The poorest American, for that matter, is wealthier than a lot of the middle class in China. So it's dangerous thinking, I think, to say we should be adopting China's policies when it comes to control of companies in order to beat China when we've been beating China by not having control in our companies and making them compete. When the government, and one of the other things, Alan, here is that this is an easy concept. And I appreciate your flattery on IQ and stuff, but this is something everybody can understand. There's something called moral hazard. I've interviewed the head of the Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler. She's a friend. She used to be Georgia's senator, and we've had these discussions several times about moral hazard. When a company knows that the government will bail it out, that company stops making reasonable business decisions, because it knows it can make bad decisions and the government will bail it out. In China, businesses in China are filled with moral hazard because they're owned by the government. And those companies then in waste, fraud, abuse, corruption inside the Chinese quote-unquote private sector is massive, because there's no market force to hold them accountable. In the United States, because our private sector economy is held by public shareholders, not by the government, but by you and me in the private economy, there's less moral hazard than in China, because our corporations know if they screw up, they're going to go bankrupt and someone's going to pick over the pieces. In China, remember the Chinese realty and banking industry? They did these massive loans that all fell apart and the government had to come in and bail them all out because they were all owned by the Chinese Communist Party. The problem in this country is in the last 20 years, we've started bailing out the financial industry when they've been making bad deals. And look what happens. Interest rates have gone up. Mortgage interest rates have gone up. Housing costs have gone up, just like in China, because the government, by bailing them out, creates moral hazard. The parts of the private sector where the government is not involved, those publicly traded companies do better than the ones that the government's involved in because they don't generate the moral hazard. The ownership of the company understands they have to be reasonable and responsible and non-corrupt, because if they go bankrupt, no one's going to bail them out. These companies the government is taking an ownership interest in, they don't have to be reasonable and responsible, and they can be corrupt, knowing that if they make mistakes, the government will bail them out. That's fundamental. That's why the United States is beating China. The more we behave like China, we're never going to out-China China. So I think our ways are not their ways. In the same way in politics, the right has been beating the left, not by being like the left, but by being an alternative to the left. So I look, Alan, I completely understand your concerns, but I disagree with where you are in your conclusion, because I think we're never going to out-China them. So we should find a different way. And by the way, the different way is what we have done in the past, and we have beaten them. We have thoroughly beaten them. Now, before I go to commercial break, I want to take Michael from Dayton, Ohio. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. My question is this. Our politicians say that it's against international law what the Trump administration is doing in Iran. And also, I heard you say one time that it's not against international law to hit certain infrastructure targets. My question is this. Where do you find international law that this is based on?
Great question. Yeah. So international law, by and large, tends to be propped up by people who hate the United States. The countries who hate the United States are the ones who cite international law against the United States. In fact, international law became a routine statement in the 1970s, often by the Soviet Union, claiming the United States was violating international law. International law is based on a series of treaties, and the Geneva Convention governs war more than any other. The Geneva Convention makes clear that if you target civilian infrastructure, that is a war crime. The exception, however, is that if that civilian infrastructure is also used for military purposes, then you can strike those things. So if you have a factory that produces food in Iran, that is civilian and you can't strike it. But if you have a power plant in Iran and that power flows to military bases and also civilian infrastructure, you can strike that. If you strike a bridge in Iran and it's a pedestrian bridge in a city, well, that could possibly be a violation of international law. But if you blow up a bridge that a tank could cross over to route troops and munitions, that's not a violation of international law. There actually are answers to this found in the Geneva Convention and other treaties related to war. But most people who talk about the Americans violated international law are just people in countries that hate the United States. Ultimately, at the end of the day, in international law, might makes right. And if the United States does something, good luck saying the United States is a war criminal. Now, I got to tell you about Old Glory Bank before I get out of here, because they're my bank and they could be your bank. It is a bank that shares your values. They are by conservatives for conservatives, and they believe in your banking freedom. There are big banks out there that will not let you bank the way you want to bank because, well, they're morally opposed to what you want to buy. You want to go buy a gun? Good luck using your debit card at some banks. Old Glory Bank doesn't care. If it's your right to do it and it's legal, do it. Old Glory Bank is a bank that stands for freedom. They're headquartered in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. They're an online bank. They don't have local branches, but it doesn't matter. They feel like a local branch. Their app is fantastic. You can deposit cash. You can deposit checks. If you're a business, they've got great business checking and great business lending. They've got mortgages. They got CDs. I've got a no-fee checking account and a no-fee savings account. Deposited a check with my mobile app last night, as a matter of fact. OldGloryBank.com/Erick is where you want to go. OldGloryBank.com/ERICK. They are my bank. They can be your bank. They are a pro-freedom bank. You'll love working with them. OldGloryBank.com/Erick. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Hello there and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here. The White Sox lost last night in the 13th inning to the Red Sox. The White Sox, from the 3rd inning to the 12th inning, led every inning. And then they lost. which means that the Pope went to bed after the 12th inning because that guy's a White Sox fan, and the only reason they were ahead of anything is because the Pope was clearly watching and praying for him the whole time. It is unfair to the rest of baseball that God's anointed on St. Peter's throne is a White Sox fan. He should be rooting for the Cubs. They're the superior team in Chicago anyway, but I digress. Also, I'm Presbyterian, so I really don't care. I'm teaching on Lamentations this weekend in my Sunday school class. Now, I want to, Emily, real quick, I want to take your call. Emily, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Let you get to your point because we got less than a minute here.
Yeah, I've just been curious this whole time why Mondani doesn't give everyone food stamps and increase their amount in New York instead of building grocery stores.
I know the answer to it because the feds have changed the rules. So if you're an illegal alien now, you can't get them. But if you go to a subsidized grocery store and you're a legal alien in New York, you can still shop. Mamdani can't do food stamps and EBT cards because that's a federal program. So the grocery store being a local program, he can do that and let the illegal aliens take advantage of the program in New York City so long as they have an ID card showing that they're a resident of New York City, which is kind of funny when you think about it. By the way, he's denying that and saying anybody can shop at the grocery store without an ID. That's true, but if you want the discount, you got to show an ID to prove you live in New York City. Doesn't matter. It could be a library card, but you got to show you're in New York City. Now, I got to tell you all about Perfectly Snug, and I got a confused email last night from a lady who was thinking of buying one. And she said, "But I thought you said it was hot last night in your room, and because you didn't have your cozy air sheets." Yes, but it was because the air conditioner was turned off. So I got in the bedroom, and the air conditioner had been turned off, and it was warm in the room. So I cranked up the Perfectly Snug mattress topper so much so the whole fitted sheet inflated. I did both sides of the bed, and it cooled down the bed perfectly and quietly. You can get one of these like an air conditioner for your bed, and it's quiet. And you can also heat up the bed if you need to. Perfectlysnug.com/Erick. You save $280, and it works. It does work. It cools down the bed with very quiet fans pumping through a mattress topper or heat if you need it. Perfectlysnug.com/Erick. You save $280. Perfectlysnug.com/ERICK. Get a great night's sleep with Perfectly Snug. It works.